Chapter 419. Li Hongyuan was naturally familiar with Qin Shufei's appearance. However, at this moment she looked like a completely different person. Come to think of it, he had only seen her in person in his previous life when he was on his deathbed. He recalled that she had never raised him up, as if she had not fulfilled her responsibilities as a mother. However, in his previous life, she had accompanied him in a special way for many years without his knowledge. In the end, she had paid the price of her own dissipation to fulfill his wish. What he had changed was not only his own fate but also the fate of many others. People who were supposed to die were not dead now. If all of this had to be exchanged, who should it belong to? If she was really a person who was blessed by the heavens, she should have been reincarnated to experience her next perfect life. Yes, since she was a person who was blessed by the heavens, there was no reason for her to suffer the tribulations of life. In this life she had married that man, Le Qingdi, and caused her to have an unfortunate life. Something must have gone wrong. If it had been in his previous life, if someone had told Li Hongyuan about karma and reincarnation, he would not have believed it at all. However, with that kind of experience, it was hard not to believe it. Although he was still unscrupulous in his actions and did not hesitate to do what he had to do, he did not hesitate to kill some people. However, now, even if he knew the reason why he had to restart his life, even if there was someone who could set everything back on track, he would not be willing. No one knew better than him what Li Hongyuan's obsession was. If he had known from the beginning that his birth mother was special, he would have used all means to achieve his goal. No matter how many people he would lose, he would not hesitate. What the imperial noble consort did was to make him unable to ignore her existence when he originally felt nothing. Perhaps he wanted to protect her, or at least send her back into the cycle of reincarnation. He knew that the possibility of this was not high, but he believed that everything depended on people. If someone had to be exchanged for her, he didn't mind at all except for those who couldn't be touched. It wasn't that he cared much about his birth mother, but compared to those who were unimportant, he naturally didn't care about it. The imperial noble consort did not know why her son suddenly fell silent. She kept feeling that she was getting weaker and weaker, as if her soul had been greatly consumed to control this body. However, in order to see her son and even have a good talk with him, the imperial noble consort was willing to die immediately. In this way it was best to rest. However, she still wanted to see her Yuan or more. Because she was not sure if there would be a next time, she forced herself to stay as quiet as possible without moving. She felt as if there were insects crawling in her throat. It was definitely a very difficult thing to endure coughing. However, how could this be hidden from Li Hongyuan's eyes? Just think about it. According to the actual time she had experienced, Imperial Noble Consort Su had only been in Qin Shufei's body for about 30 years. Moreover, the things she had experienced were not much. Moreover, a person's experience was not measured by time. Therefore, at this moment, the Imperial Noble Consort was probably not comparable to Jingwan in many aspects. It was purely a fantasy to try to hide her little tricks from Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan got up and poured a glass of water for her. He put it on the small table beside her and retreated. The Imperial Noble Consort was stunned. Although her son's expression did not change, his attitude had inexplicably softened. Although she did not understand, she was extremely happy. Her hands trembled as she picked up the glass. It was clearly just a glass of water, but she felt that it was exceptionally sweet. There was nothing sweeter than this. Because she drank it sip by sip, she especially cherished it. Seeing her like this, Li Hongyuan frowned slightly. He really did not understand. It was just a glass of water. Was there a need to be like this? Therefore, people like Li Hongyuan would probably never be able to understand the feelings of a real mother. They would really give everything to their children without any complaints or regrets. As for their children, even if it was just a little thing, they would be exceptionally happy and satisfied. Especially in the current situation between the mother and son. After the Imperial Noble Consort finished drinking the water, Li Hongyuan spoke again. Don't be so stupid when it comes to things like possession. You should know the consequences if people find out about this. Although Li Hongyuan's words were very unpleasant, the Imperial Noble Consort's heart was particularly pleased. Her son was showing concern for her. Yuan, don't worry, mother. Imperial Noble Consort only revealed her traces when she saw you. Others would definitely not. After all, I have been with Sister Qin for more than 10 years. No one knows her words and actions better than Imperial Noble Consort. In the beginning, when the Imperial Noble Consort referred to herself as Imperial Noble Consort, she was still a little hesitant. However, seeing that Li Hongyuan did not have any reaction, she became smoother. Speaking of which, it's also because my son is sharp and intelligent. If it were someone else, how could they have such suspicions because of such a little abnormality? Li Hongyuan did not speak. If it was not a special experience, he naturally would not think of this point easily. It had nothing to do with sharp and intelligent. Take care of yourself. This son will take his leave first. Other than imperial noble consort Su, he did not have any connections with the rest of the people in the harem. It was definitely not good to stay in the Sweet Dew Palace for too long. Originally, after imperial noble consort Qin woke up, she did not want to see anyone else but wanted to see the couple. This was already puzzling. Although he did not call her imperial noble consort, he claimed to have changed. The imperial noble consort was also happy. Although she was reluctant to part at this time, she also knew how powerful it was. Otherwise, imperial noble consort Qin would not only help out when needed but could not do anything at other times. Her son was special. Only by being isolated far away could he live better. Thinking of this, her heart was once again in extreme pain. It was all right. Yuan, wait a moment. Imperial noble consort still has a few words. The imperial noble consort was a little hesitant. However, she was worried that her son would suffer without knowing it. Regarding imperial noble consort Su Shi, imperial noble consort is not trying to sow discord between you two. It's just that Su Shi is a person. Imperial noble consort? Li Hongyuan calmly interrupted her. To be honest, it was just a form of address. He really did not care much about it. If it could make this woman happier, it did not matter. Not for anything else, but for Wan he did not mind doing something. This son has a sense of propriety regarding the matter of the Jade Essence Palace. This son knows better than you what kind of person Su Shi is. You do not need to worry about the things this son has done. There is also no need to ask Imperial Noble Consort Shu to do anything. You just need to take care of yourselves. How could the Imperial Noble Consort not understand the meaning of Li Hongyuan's words? No matter what kind of thoughts Su Shi had, her son knew. Then, there was really nothing to worry about. Good. Knowing that you are fine, Yuan. Knowing that you are more appropriate than expected, Imperial Noble Consort has nothing to worry about. Even if I die now. Look at how happy Imperial Noble Consort has become. Originally, Imperial Noble Consort has already died. Now Imperial Noble Consort has no regrets. After the Imperial Noble Consort finished speaking, Li Hongyuan clearly felt that she had become weaker. He unconsciously clenched his fists and his heart tightened slightly. This person, when faced with a desperate situation or death, if they had a strong obsession, they would be able to obtain more. The soul would be the same. No regrets? Imperial Noble Consort does not want to see your grandson? Even if you can't personally hug him, what about taking a look? You don't even know about this son's birth. You did not personally see this son grow up. Don't you want to make up for it with your grandson? Hearing this, the Imperial Noble Consort's eyes became more spirited. Before you two got married, younger sister Qin actually sent people to inquire about it in private. Your wife is a good person. You have to treat her well. As for other women, the Imperial Noble Consort paused. In short, don't let her down. In fact, she wanted to say that it didn't matter if other women were necessary. She was the victim. Moreover, she had once received the promise of only one person for a lifetime. As a woman, she was not the kind of person who wanted others to be bad if she was not good. That way, she would be able to obtain psychological balance. If possible, she actually hoped that every woman in the world could be treated well. However, her son was a prince after all. The education he received was different from the beginning. The mother and son did not have a foundation of feelings before. The Imperial Noble Consort would not think that she had the right to order her son around just because he accepted her well and had a soft temperament. Moreover, her son was someone who might ascend the throne. The harem was not that simple. More importantly, her son was already over 20 years old. He had his own thoughts and should be responsible for his own matters. In her opinion, even if she was a parent, it was best to guide them from the side and not make all the decisions for them. She is still young now. Her bones have not fully grown yet. There is no rush to have a child. Moreover, with the current situation, it is not suitable for you two to have a child. Imperial Noble Consort does not mind waiting for a few more years. Her son was now over 20 years old. She was also quite anxious about her grandson. However, some things could not be rushed. Li Hongyuan quietly looked at the Imperial Noble Consort. He was actually a little surprised by his birth mother's words. How could his blood-related maternal grandfather, in a family like the Pei family, raise a daughter who was completely different from them and did not fit in? However, compared to Madame Su, Wan should be able to get along well with her real mother-in-law. Perhaps after a little more time, her mother-in-law would stand on her daughter-in-law's side. Wan will like you very much. Really? Then it's really a pity that I can't talk to her. However, the imperial noble consort was even happier that her son seemed to really like his wife. When he talked about her, he would unconsciously become gentle. She has spoken up for you more than once. You should have had a happy life. What a silly child. How can life be perfect? However, if you can obtain it, you should cherish it. The next time she says something like this, you can tell her that imperial noble consort has you as her son. Everything else is actually nothing. Li Hongyuan lowered his eyebrows and restrained all his emotions. If there is a chance, you can tell her yourself. In addition, I promised her that I will not have a second woman in this life. The imperial noble consort's heart trembled. Okay. As she spoke, she inexplicably shed tears. https://11/1180/8728135. Chapter 420. Seeing her son leave, the imperial noble consort wanted to stop him, but in the end she just watched quietly. What was the saying again? Sure enough, the more one got, the greedier one became. She was no exception. Before meeting her son, she just wanted to see him and talk to him. She didn't expect her son to know her identity and not be afraid of her, but to acknowledge her. It was like a dream, but it really happened. Hearing his words, she really wanted to live for a long time. The children she had seen were all from other families. Even when she was still in the Pei family, she would at most tease the children in the family. She didn't think that there was anything special about them. But what if that child was her grandson or granddaughter? She didn't have the fortune to see her son's cute little hands and feet, but her grandchild. Just thinking about that soft little body, fair and plump, growing up little by little and revealing an incomparably pure smile, just this alone made her heart melt into a mess. In fact, the imperial noble consort also wanted to ask her son if he knew that he was the son of a ghost. Although she didn't know about her son's birth, it was enough to show that her son was indeed born after her death. That man's attitude towards him was enough to prove this point. Thinking about it, other than herself, only that man and Su Shi knew about this matter. Therefore, it didn't seem strange that Su Shi would raise Yuan. These two people probably wouldn't tell him about it. It was hard to say if there were other people who knew about it. As long as they showed signs, her son might know. She didn't care about the matter of being the son of a ghost, but it wasn't a good thing, so she could only suppress it and not mention it. Compared to the joy of the imperial noble consort being acknowledged by her son and her longing for the future, she was in a good mood even though she was weak. Li Hongyuan, who knew more, obviously felt a little heavy in his heart. However, after seeing Jingwan's concerned eyes, the heaviness dissipated a lot. Things like changing one's fate would happen again. Although it couldn't be compared to Wan's death date, it couldn't be considered a complete change of fate. When the time came, if God really wanted to stop him, so what if hundreds of thousands of people were buried with him? When it came to his biological mother, he admitted that it was impossible for him to do this, but he would do his best. Jingwan saw that Li Hongyuan's face had eased and she was relieved. It seemed that it wasn't too difficult. Well, if Jingwan knew what her husband wanted to do, she probably wouldn't be so relaxed. At this moment she didn't ask much. If he could let her know, he probably wouldn't have let her leave just now. And what he hid, it wasn't that he didn't want to tell her. More often than not, she believed that it was for her own good. How could Jingwan ignore his good intentions? When he left, Li Hongyuan turned back to take a look. Separated by a veil, imperial concubine Shu seemed to be unable to hold on and had fallen asleep. When she woke up again, there was an 80 to 90% chance that it would really be imperial concubine Shu. There were two different souls in the same body. In the absence of external forces, it was naturally difficult to snatch the body from the original owner. Looking at his biological mother, she wouldn't do such a thing. However, Li Hongyuan slightly narrowed his eyes. Later, Li Hongyuan asked someone to send a message to Gong Jiu in the Kunyi Palace. As for the Empress, it was almost done. He could leave it to the imperial doctors and ask them to focus on the Sweet Dew Palace. Gong Jiu knew that imperial concubine Qin was one of the people on his master's side. The so-called closeness was reflected in this, not to mention that Empress Sun was an enemy. Therefore, even without Li Hongyuan's order, he was biased towards the Sweet Dew Palace from the beginning. It was easy to find the reason and others couldn't easily find the flaw. Liqingdi still had things to do. Li Hongyuan was too lazy to wait for him and directly left the palace. After hearing this, imperial concubine Su, who was waiting for him in the Jade Essence Palace, fiercely lost her temper. For her, this was really unusual. However, after losing her temper, Imperial concubine Su could only be sad and full of grievances. Unfortunately, there were some things that she couldn't tell anyone, especially when the emperor had opinions about her. However, the days when Imperial concubine Su couldn't even swallow rice were still to come. After leaving the palace, let Min Xiang know about Min Xiang's mistress having an illegitimate son. In addition, Third Imperial brother's backyard has been quiet for a long time. It should attract Imperial concubine Su's attention. Looking at the meaning of his birth mother, he was afraid that Imperial concubine Su and Imperial concubine Su were not as good as Imperial concubine Su said. Moreover, he originally wanted to find something for Imperial concubine Su to do. Now the timing was just right. It would also save Imperial concubine Su from spending all her energy on him. Moreover, if she couldn't do anything about him, she might turn to Wan Wan. Moreover, he didn't think that Imperial concubine Su would change her attitude towards Wan Wan because of his words. She might become more serious, but it might be more subtle. After all, once some women got into a dead end, especially someone like Imperial concubine Su who wanted to hide her control, it was even more difficult to turn back easily. Jingwan opened her mouth slightly and then kept silent. Imperial concubine Su, you're on your own now. On the surface, Min Xiang and her son-in-law were not bad, but in private they were not good. Originally, Jingwan thought that it was fine for such a good-for-nothing man like Fifth Imperial concubine Su to let Princess Min Xiang bully him. He could also tolerate Min Xiang aborting the child without permission because she didn't want to have children. Under the background of valuing children, it was reasonable for him to report this matter to Lu Qingdi. It was enough that he could act as if nothing had happened. However, she didn't expect that before Min Xiang married him, he already had 2 children. Under such circumstances, he still dared to marry Princess Min Xiang. Therefore, when this honest man became bold, he could really pierce through the sky. However, it was probably because he had a successor that he endured the matter of Princess Min Xiang aborting the child. After all, while he suffered a loss, his family benefited greatly. However, the 5th prince consort had an extramarital affair before he got married and had a child. This was probably the most outrageous thing he had done. With his soft personality, he was really careful and cautious. Therefore, if it wasn't for the irreconcilable conflict between him and Min Xiang, his parents wouldn't have known that he actually had a child. Thus, it could be imagined that Imperial consort Su had only sent people to investigate casually. The people who investigated were actually quite perfunctory. After all, in their opinion, no one had the guts to fool them. Unexpectedly, they didn't find out anything about this matter. As for 5th Imperial concubine Su, when he found out that he was the candidate for the position of Imperial concubine Su's son-in-law, he covered up this matter even more tightly. It wasn't that he was bold. On the contrary, it was because he was too timid. He was afraid of the consequences of angering Imperial concubine Su and Prince Rue. He also knew that if he revealed the matter of the child after marriage, the matter would only become more serious. Therefore he was even more careful. With Princess Min Xiang's personality, and 5th Imperial concubine Su's parents didn't want their son to have no successor. After finding out about this matter, they naturally helped to cover it up. If Princess Min Xiang found out about this matter, she would definitely turn the sky upside down. After all, in her opinion, the person who was definitely in the palm of her hand actually did such a thing. One could imagine how angry she would be. Without Imperial concubine Su by his side, he would definitely lose his rationality and do something irreversible. By the time Imperial concubine Su found out, it would probably be too late. Moreover, Li Hongming was the person that Imperial concubine Su truly cared about the most. Imperial concubine Su's lack of a grandson had always been a thorn in her heart. Now that she found out that she might not be able to have a son anymore, she would definitely be half dead. A person who couldn't have a son wanted to be the emperor. No matter how much the emperor favored the emperor, it was impossible for him to do such a thing. If they wanted to continue fighting for the emperor's throne, they would definitely have to hide it. If they were forced into a corner, they might even have a bastard child to make up the numbers. When the time came, they would reveal it. That scene was too beautiful. Jingwan expressed that she didn't dare to think about it. Moreover, Li Hongming was a man who couldn't have children. In the current situation, he was probably only a little better than a eunuch. In Jingwan's opinion, that person's heart wasn't very open and bright. In the future, he would probably become even more gloomy and dark. That kind of recognition was actually very scary. Anyway, he didn't have to worry about the future. He would dare to do anything and be able to do anything. However, Jingwan looked at the man beside her and wasn't too worried. If it's not enough, then reveal Su Mingjiang's matter as well. Li Hongyuan continued. That was why there was no most ruthless, only more ruthless. Jingwan looked at the sky. Although she only saw the top of the carriage, the result was the same. She felt that she could rest easy. Something happened to her daughter. Her son was in despair. The most capable person in her maternal family fell. It was equivalent to losing the Su family's pillar. Who knew how many people in the Su family would follow the collapse? With all these, if noble consort Su still came to find trouble with her, then noble consort Su wasn't human. And the others' movements were naturally abnormally nimble. However, the next day the matter had completely reached Princess Minxiang's ears. Princess Minxiang's actions were even more nimble than Jingwan's. She immediately brought people and killed her way to the place where the fifth prince consort was keeping a mistress. Coincidentally, the fifth prince consort was also caught on the spot. Jingwan felt that it was quite boring. Naturally, she would let her subordinates keep an eye on such gossip and report it to her. Jingwan prepared to go to the post house to find the female envoy from Jin Tsang. After receiving the news, it was best for her to slow down. In any case, the envoys from various countries wouldn't leave so quickly. Chapter 421. Before Princess Minxiang got married, she pretended to be innocent and cute in front of Lu Qingdi, acting spoiled and silly. As for noble consort Su, as the most favored person in the harem, even if noble consort Su restrained her a little, with her status, noble consort Su would never teach her daughter to be kind to others. Princess Minxiang was also very clear that with so many siblings, there were only a few who could make her restrain herself. Among the princesses, she was the eldest princess. Even if she was not that unruly, she was definitely willful and not someone who would easily be taken advantage of. After breaking away from noble consort Su's discipline, such a husband encouraged her to be even more arrogant. When she flipped out, her fighting strength was definitely strong. The fifth prince consort hugged his beautiful wife, the two children wrapped around his knees. He was a completely different person compared to when he was in front of Princess Minxiang. He was not like how he was in the eyes of outsiders. He looked somewhat elegant, not outstanding but not very mediocre either. He had a certain amount of popularity. However, in this place he was a real man. His beautiful wife always looked at him with reverence. Even if he threw a tantrum because of what happened outside, she was still gentle, considerate, understanding, and obedient. His two sons were also smart and obedient and always looked at him with admiration. No matter what he said, they would be extremely supportive, thinking that he was the most powerful person in the world. A man's vanity and pride were greatly satisfied. When Princess Minxiang broke through the door with her people, the fifth prince consort's originally complacent face turned into extreme terror after a moment of astonishment. He did not care about the woman beside him and subconsciously shielded the two children behind him. Princess Minxiang sneered, "You are quite manly now, but it is a pity that this is all we can do. Tie them up and take them away." No one knew Princess Minxiang's true nature better than this prince consort. Because of this, even though the winter was cold enough, he felt as though he had fallen into an ice cave. His entire body was stiff, as though even his blood had frozen. However, before he could react, all four of them including him were tied up. Just as the fifth prince consort was about to speak, he was ruthlessly slapped a few times. His mouth was full of blood, his teeth were loose and his face quickly swelled up. One had to know that even if the princess did not have much status to a certain extent, she was still the emperor's daughter. The princess residence was well equipped. The quality and quantity of guards could not compare to a prince. However, that was still proper. Normal large residences would not have such guards. These people were at most guards of the residence. However, like master like servant. Used to Princess Minxiang's attitude towards fifth prince consort, these people naturally followed suit and would not be lenient. If the fifth prince consort was like this, how could he expect the woman and the two children to be treated well? After the fifth prince consort was thoroughly humiliated in front of Princess Minxiang, he would come here to find his dignity. The more cowardly a man was, the more extreme his methods would be in a place where he could find his dignity. The woman he was raising was 100% loyal and obedient to him. Naturally, there was no need to beat around the bush. He only needed to vent his anger in the most direct way. There was no woman who would not be afraid of such things. This canary-like woman was no exception. As for the culprit who caused all this, she was naturally extremely terrified. Although the fifth prince consort did not say anything in detail, she could more or less guess some things from his words and actions. She had once fantasized about waiting for this man to get married and bring the three of them back. Even though she was pregnant with a princess, she still harbored a little bit of hope. However, she had been receiving punches and kicks from this man time and time again. After finding out the reason, that little bit of hope disappeared without a trace. The rest of her days were spent in fear. She was very clear that once her existence was discovered by Princess Min Xiang, she would die very miserably. She would not have the slightest ability to resist. After all, she was a member of the royal family. If she wanted to kill her, it would be as easy as killing an ant. It was not that she did not want to leave, but where could she go? She was an orphan with no power or influence. If it was not for this man, she did not know what kind of state she would have fallen to. Moreover, she could not let go of the two children. She had always been scared witless and hoped that she would not be discovered. However, she also knew that paper could not wrap fire. One day, therefore, when Princess Min Xiang barged in with people, other than trembling in fear, she also felt a bit of relief. It was extremely contradictory, but it really existed. The most pitiful and innocent were the two children. They did not know anything. They did not even know what kind of existence their mother and themselves were. They were so scared that they cried loudly and subconsciously asked their parents for help. However, it was completely useless. Even for these two innocent children, they were not treated gently at all. Even if they were carried away by a guard, in fact they were not. They were violently pushed and pulled up when they fell. If they did not stand firm in time, they would be dragged away. When their children were treated like this as parents, they would definitely feel pain and hatred. The fifth prince consort's face was filled with unprecedented malevolence and hatred. However, Princess Min Xiang only looked at him with a cold smile. She clearly told him that his life and death, everything about him, was in her hands. If he dared to betray her, go against her, then his ending would be abnormally tragic. Princess Min Xiang came and left with her entourage in a grandiose manner. She didn't hide the whole process and didn't keep a low profile. She openly dragged the family of four behind the carriage. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell what was going on. Princess Min Xiang's residence was half a city away from the place where the fifth prince consort kept his mistress. Therefore, along the way, who knew how many people knew about this matter? When they returned to the princess residence, Princess Min Xiang did not say much. She only threw the fifth prince consort's mistress to a group of guards and said, "This is your reward." Then she ordered the fifth prince consort and the two children to watch the scene. Even if the guards had a bit of conscience, they were all fed to the dogs because they knew that if they had a conscience, Princess Min Xiang would be chopped up by them. As for those without a conscience, they were naturally even more unscrupulous. Compared to the prince consort, they were only small figures. Now they could taste the prince consort's woman and trample on his dignity. The pleasure of being above a big figure was not something that could be felt all the time. Princess Min Xiang did not watch the scene but listened to it. The woman's pitiful cries and pleas for mercy, the two children's cries for help, and the guards' unscrupulous laughter and insults were all on the other side of the flower bush. Princess Min Xiang was leisurely drinking tea and listening with an indifferent expression. However, gradually, her eyes narrowed because she didn't hear her husband's voice from start to finish. It sounded like a feast, but don't forget that it was winter now. No matter how hot-blooded they were outside, they would not be able to get high. Therefore, if it was a kind of torture for the victim, it was not much better for the abuser. It was already good enough that they did not become impotent. In fact, although the woman who was violated was crying and begging for mercy, she did not look at the fifth prince consort and did not ask him for help, because she knew it was useless. The fifth prince consort's eyes were bloodshot. The tip of his tongue was bitten and his fingernails dug into his palms. However, he watched from start to finish. Even when the two children tugged at his clothes and cried for him to save their mother, he was indifferent and did not even turn his head. He kept watching like this as if he wanted to remember everything and turn it into bone-deep hatred. When he did not speak, Princess Min Xiang expressed her displeasure. Her eyes moved slightly and she had someone bring the prince consort and the two children over. Haven't father-in-law and mother-in-law been outside asking for an audience? Now bring them in and help the prince consort get together with this princess. There are some things that they should naturally be involved in. When the fifth prince consort's parents found out that Princess Min Xiang already knew everything and personally went to capture them, they almost fainted. In the end, their worry overcame their fear. The way they came in was not the same as Princess Min Xiang's. Some things were not only heard but also seen. At that moment they really did not know if they should be ashamed, angry or hateful. But his impression of Princess Min Xiang dropped from negative to infinitely negative, and the coldness in his heart was so cold that it made him shiver. They knelt down to greet Princess Min Xiang. Princess Min Xiang only looked down at them and had no intention of telling them to get up. She looked at the two crying children. So cute. No wonder the prince consort, father-in-law, and mother-in-law all like you. Unfortunately, this princess does not like you. Come, cut off your tongues and cut off your tendons. Princess. The fifth prince consort's parents were terrified. The fifth prince consort also raised his head. Princess Min Xiang saw this and laughed wantonly. If you speak, then you will end up like them. Think carefully. Clearly, the three of them did not speak anymore. However, the hatred in their eyes could not be concealed. Princess Min Xiang laughed mockingly. As expected, you care more about yourself. Do it. The two children did not even have time to react before a few demons pounced on them. In an extremely short period of time, they completed Princess Min Xiang's task. Clearly, it was not their first time doing this. The scene was very tragic. In reality, Princess Min Xiang had always been afraid of red liquid, especially blood. However, she endured it now. She smiled and her eyes were cold. If he did not explode in silence, he would die in silence. The fifth prince consort chose the former at this moment. Chapter 422. Vicious woman, go and die. The fifth prince consort suddenly charged at Princess Min Xiang without any reason. Accompanied by the heart-wrenching screams of his parents, they were pressed down so tightly that they could not move. Accompanied by the wantonly cries of pain from the two children, they could only roll on the ground helplessly. Accompanied by the increasingly weak cries for help of the woman beside him, who had followed him for many years and whom he liked, when she learned of her son's situation, she almost went mad. Fifth prince consort's eyes were completely red, filled with savagery. Like a malicious spirit, he tightly gripped Princess Min Xiang's neck. This change came too suddenly and caught them off guard. The people serving Princess Min Xiang couldn't react at all. When they regained their senses, they immediately went up to tear him apart, scratching and cursing him arrogantly. But the fifth prince consort didn't move at all. His strength was unprecedentedly strong and seemed like he wanted Princess Min Xiang to die. Princess Min Xiang grabbed his hand and wanted to pry it open. Even if she choked him until he bled, it was useless. She made gurgling sounds in her throat and her eyes were filled with disbelief. She probably didn't expect that this man would dare to resist her and even want to kill her. But the gradually suffocating feeling showed that everything was so real. Looking at him at such a close distance, a great fear suddenly appeared in her heart and she started to struggle with all her might. The fifth prince consort gritted his teeth. You vicious woman, go and die, go and die. At that moment, some unknown thought appeared in his mind. He suddenly leaned forward and bit down on Princess Min Xiang's ear. Even though her neck was being strangled, Princess Min Xiang screamed in pain. The people beside Princess Min Xiang were so frightened that their guts were shattered. Their sharp nails scratched at his eyes, ears and other places and then pulled his hair. In a short moment, the fifth prince consort's face was already unrecognizable. There were streaks of blood. His right eye was very injured. Not only was it bleeding, his eyeball was about to fall out. They hoped that he would let go because of the pain. However, not only did the fifth prince consort not let go, he even exploded with unprecedented potential due to the pain. He only said two words, go and die, go and die. Are you all dead? Hurry up and release this disrespectful bastard. The servant beside Princess Min Xiang roared angrily at the stunned guards. Such an exciting scene really scared many people, including the parents of the fifth prince consort. They were all stunned on the spot. The guards seemed to come back to their senses and hurriedly went forward, smashing their swords at his back and head. They did not hold back at all. To put it bluntly, the fifth prince consort was already a dead man. In order to save the princess, it was not too much to kill him now. But after a few hits, the fifth prince consort tore off Princess Min Xiang's ear. This time, almost everyone was scared out of their wits. But Princess Min Xiang was already out of breath. However, there were still some who had not completely lost their souls. The guard leader drew his blade and cut off the fifth prince consort's arm. The fifth prince consort staggered 2 steps back and fell to the ground. He looked very bad, but he did not seem to feel any pain. He laughed wildly, but his laughter was mournful and strange, making people's hair stand on end. However, these people from the princess residence did not care about him. They hurriedly checked on Princess Min Xiang's condition. Fortunately, she was still alive. But when they saw that Princess Min Xiang was missing an ear, her neck, cheeks and clothes were all covered in blood, they were probably done for. It was not bad to be able to keep their lives. Residence doctor, where is the residence doctor? Before the residence doctor arrived, another group of people hurriedly arrived. The number of people was quite impressive. But when they saw the scene in front of them, they all felt their hearts turn cold. It was over. Other than an ant, there was also the head steward of the Jade Essence Palace. Noble consort Su asked them to come together because she was worried that Princess Min Xiang would be stubborn. The two of them brought some people and were more than enough to restrain Princess Min Xiang under her orders. However, the scene now was telling them the truth. Even though they rushed over, they were still too late. What should and should not have happened had already happened, and it was very bad. The two leaders of the Jade Essence Palace were not stupid. Looking at the current situation, they could roughly guess how things had developed. The prince consort had hurt the princess and it was absolutely unforgivable. However, what Princess Min Xiang had done was too vicious. Even if the prince consort was punished in the end, her reputation would be completely ruined. And without a doubt, noble consort Su would also be implicated because Princess Min Xiang was her daughter. It was the mother's fault for not teaching the daughter well. Her daughter was so vicious and harmed innocent children. Naturally, she would suspect noble consort Su's character. Recently, noble consort Su had lost her holy heart. What Princess Min Xiang had done was not as simple as adding fuel to the fire. Originally, Princess Min Xiang had the absolute advantage in this matter. As long as she endured a bit, she didn't need to do anything. She only needed to cry at the appropriate time and the emperor would make a decision for her and punish the prince consort severely. In the future, however the princess wanted to control the prince consort, it would all depend on her mood. And as the father, the emperor would also comfort her. A good card had been ruined by Princess Min Xiang like this. The two leaders of the Jade Essence Palace looked at each other and then looked at the large group of the 5th Prince Consort's clansmen behind them. It was impossible to cover up this matter, but they still had to prevent the situation from escalating. It wasn't the time to blame anyone and it wasn't the time to investigate. Hurrying to save people was the most important thing. At this time, other than the two uncontrollable children, everyone maintained their silence. Those who were still rational all stood in their own positions and calculated how to remove themselves or their clansmen from this matter or reduce the responsibility. Princess Min Xiang and the people behind her wanted to protect their reputation, while the 5th Prince Consort and the people behind him wanted to protect their lives and clansmen. This side had already sent people into the palace to inform Imperial Consort Su of the severity of the matter. The 5th Prince Consort's clan wasn't to be trifled with either. Originally, they should have shared interests with Imperial Consort Rue. However, not everyone was willing to rely on Imperial Consort Rue. Now that they wanted to protect themselves, they had to find someone else. In reality, with such a big handle on Imperial Consort Su, it wasn't difficult to find someone to help them. When Jingwan received the details of the situation, she was teasing the two little white tigers that she had gotten from one show. The two little fellows had been raised to be very energetic and had been specially trained. Not only were they not afraid of people, according to Jingwan, they would even take the initiative to act spoiled and cute with people. They were extremely adorable. Jingwan's mood was originally very good, but after hearing the details of the matter, her mood fell to the bottom of the valley. She took back the hand that was stroking the tiger's ear. Take them away. Take care of them carefully. Don't get sick. Jingwan bent down and quietly washed her hands. She held a cup of hot tea and looked at an unknown place in a daze. The people around her all knew that their Wang Fei was currently unhappy, but they didn't know what to do and didn't know how to console her. Li Hongyuan lifted the curtain and came in. Clearly he had already received the news from the study. Li Hongyuan walked to Jingwan's side and sat down. What is it? Are you angry with your husband? Jingwan looked at him in surprise. Why does Yuan say this? After all, if your husband didn't let people leak the matter, it probably wouldn't be so bad, right? Although he said this, Li Hongyuan didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it at all. Even if Jingwan wasn't clear about Li Hongyuan's nature, she was still 70 to 80% sure. It would be strange if he cared. He was so duplicitous and it was for her. However, in Jingwan's view, his insincere performance was simply mocking her soft-heartedness. Yuan said this. In a life-and-death situation, one would be a fool if he didn't take advantage of the situation. Moreover, what the 5th Prince Consort did might not be hidden forever. In reality, with his relationship with Princess Min Xiang, it was inevitable that it would be exposed. However, Princess Min Xiang's methods were too vicious and unexpected. She clearly had the upper hand. I originally thought that even if her temper wasn't good, she wouldn't go too far. Who knew? Jingwan wasn't a saint. She wouldn't take all the blame just because something happened that was difficult to accept. In reality, Li Hongyuan had expected Princess Min Xiang to do such a thing. However, so what? If she didn't do this, she wouldn't be able to achieve the desired effect. Since things have already come to this, there's nothing we can do to salvage the situation. We can only secretly add fuel to the fire and blow things up a little. Moreover, hasn't Min Xiang already received her retribution? A princess had lost an ear and was almost strangled to death. Her vocal cords might also be damaged. This kind of thing could be said to be a fatal blow to a noble who cared a lot about her appearance. If she had the reputation of harming innocent children, she could only live an ignoble life for the rest of her life. Speaking of this, Jingwan sighed in her heart. This honest man was bullied too much. When he exploded, it was quite scary. Therefore, it was best to leave some leeway when doing things on a daily basis. In any case, he was the person who shared the same pillow, not a mortal enemy. Why bother? Jingwan wasn't in the mood to listen to any more gossip about this kind of mood-destroying matter. I'd better go find the hidden gold envoy. Chapter 423. Jingwan was not in the mood to listen to any more gossip that would spoil her mood. I'd better go find the envoy from the hidden gold treasury. Li Hongyuan smiled and nodded. Since she had made up her mind, Jingwan turned around and asked someone to send the prepared invitation to the courier station. Because the hidden gold treasury was mainly made up of women, it was reasonable for them to come in contact with the officials from the Qi Yuan since they represented the country. However, the officials from the Qi Yuan were a group of men, and some of their ideas were deeply ingrained. In their eyes, women who meddled in political affairs were like hens. They also wanted to avoid arousing suspicion, so naturally, they would not easily come in contact with the hidden gold treasury. The hidden gold treasury was located to the west of the Qi Yuan, northwest of the southern Qi Yuan. The other neighboring countries were insignificant small countries. The hidden gold treasury's geographical location was special. Compared to the southern Qi Yuan, there was a natural moat between the two countries. Compared to the Qi Yuan, the two countries were more harmonious. Therefore, the envoys from the other countries, even if they were from the small countries, were more busy. Only the hidden gold treasury was free. However, they were also very open-minded. Before they left, they wantonly bought things in the capital of the Qi Yuan. The hidden gold treasury was not as rich as the Qi Yuan. Most of the silk and porcelain products were also from the Qi Yuan. Moreover, they were expensive and did not look particularly good. Now that they had the opportunity, they did not hesitate to buy things that were taboo. In comparison, the prices were simply too low. Under such circumstances, the hidden gold treasury's envoy was naturally very surprised when he received Jingwan's invitation. However, the invitation clearly stated that she was only interested in the cultural history of the hidden gold treasury. Therefore, she wanted to meet with the hidden gold treasury's envoy. Although they were women, the Qi Yuan's old foxes and sly old foxes were essentially the same. When they were sent to the Qi Yuan, they naturally had a detailed understanding of the Qi Yuan. In fact, among them, there were people who specialized in the study of the Qi Yuan. Naturally, they knew what kind of situation the women in the Qi Yuan were. Under such circumstances, it was unexpected that they would receive an invitation from the princess consort who was directly interested in the hidden gold treasury. Qi Yuan's men were respected, and it was even more so for the nobles. As the wife of such a person, wasn't it obvious that she was slapping her husband's face by being interested in the hidden gold treasury, which was obviously a woman's status? To put it bluntly, she was simply not following the virtues of a woman. Was it really okay for her to do this? However, since the invitation was sent, and the other party was of noble status and looked like a woman, there was nothing to hide. Naturally, there was no reason for them to reject. In fact, they were also very curious about this princess consort. If she was a woman from their own country, it would be strange if they didn't have such thoughts. However, the women in the Qi Yuan had always been taught to treat their husbands as gods. People like them were really not allowed to show their faces in public. They were definitely the negative examples of the women in the Qi Yuan. Now that there was such an abnormal princess consort, how could they not be curious? Therefore, the invitation was replied very quickly. However, the invitation was changed to another place. After all, the courier station was full of people and there were envoys from more than 10 countries. It was indeed not a suitable place for a princess consort like her to go. Almost immediately she received a reply. Jingwan's bad mood finally turned for the better. She was in a good mood and asked her husband about it. Then she prepared a small gift for tomorrow's appointment. Whenever Jingwan gave someone a little gift, Li Hongyuan would definitely be jealous. However, he didn't flare up this time. He told her everything that Jingwan wanted to know. Unfortunately, the appointment was scheduled for the next day. Now that she was free, she seemed to have nothing to do. As for Princess Minxiang's matter, she didn't want to pay attention to it. However, it seemed to be a little uncomfortable. Forget it. Princess Minxiang had done such a disgusting thing. She should know even more about her end. When Imperial Consort Su learned about the tragic situation in Princess Minxiang's residence, she almost fainted. In fact, she wasn't much better than not fainting. She was panting rapidly and her chest was heaving up and down. She didn't calm down for a long time. After she calmed down, she, who had always been good at self-cultivation, smashed her own palace for the first time. She no longer cared about her image and cursed the evil creature. This vile spawn was not the same as the one who scolded Li Hongyuan in the past. This was a real, genuine vile spawn. Imperial Consort Su was very clear about the consequences of this matter. It was because she knew that Imperial Consort Su couldn't wait to strangle her own daughter to death. That evil creature, that evil creature. If I knew this would happen, I should have drowned her when she was born. Why didn't she just be strangled to death? It would have been more straightforward if she died. Imperial Consort Su was extremely angry. The servants by her side didn't dare to step forward to mediate. After venting, Imperial Consort Su finally found her reason. It was useless to say anything now. She could only think of a way to smooth things over as much as possible. Imperial Consort Su coughed violently. It looked like her lungs were about to be coughed out. A palace maid hurriedly poured water for her and gave her a pill. Imperial Consort Su's body had been unwell recently. The reason why she didn't collapse from anger was definitely because her endurance was very strong. After Imperial Consort Su recovered, she said, "Inform Prince Rue to immediately rush to the 5th princess's residence and understand what happened." Imperial Consort, don't worry. His Highness must have already known about such a big matter. He might already be in the princess's residence right now. The palace maid beside her comforted her. Imperial Consort Su naturally believed these words. Other than occasionally giving her advice, she had always believed in her son's ability. Noble Consort Su would never believe that there was no problem in this matter. After all, the distance between Princess Minxiang's residence and Princess Wu Gu's mistress was much greater than the distance between the residence and the imperial palace. When Princess Minxiang brought people to capture Wu Gu, someone had already rushed to the imperial palace to report. Even if it wasn't so convenient to enter the palace, it was delayed for some time. She immediately sent people out of the palace. Every time they rushed to the residence, the matter was already irreversible. Clearly something went wrong. When it was too much of a coincidence, it definitely wasn't a coincidence. It must be the person who told Minxiang about this matter. https://11/1180/8954608. Chapter 424. Just like what Noble Consort Su's palace maid had said, the matter had blown up. Princess Minxiang was Prince Rue's younger sister. How could he not have received the news? His people would definitely tell him immediately and then he would definitely ask about it. However, Li Hongming's understanding of Princess Minxiang was lacking. Coincidentally, he still had matters to attend to. In his opinion, it was just a capture and he could handle it however he wanted. It wasn't a big deal. Naturally, he didn't rush over immediately. When he received the news again, he immediately threw away what he was doing and rushed over. He was filled with regret. Therefore, Li Hongyuan understood their psychological state very well. He was very clear about what methods to use and what needed to be done. Prince Rue also wanted to strangle Princess Minxiang. Looking at Princess Minxiang, who was still unconscious and had a white cloth wrapped around her head, this wasn't the first time he had this thought. She had done such a vicious thing and damaged the imperial family's reputation. Now she was even a one-eared princess. She was simply a disgrace to the imperial family. In reality, what Princess Minxiang had done was nothing in their eyes. Whether it was Noble Consort Su or Prince Rue, the prerequisite was that they couldn't let the world know about it. For people like them, how many of their hands were not stained with blood and human lives? It didn't matter if it was done in private. If she died, then so be it. However, it couldn't be done in public. Even if she was just a servant who could be beaten and killed by her master, she would be accused of being vicious if it was spread to the outside world. What's more, she was of good birth and had 2 children. In this way, it wouldn't be too much even if she was condemned by 1,000 people. His mortal enemies would seize this point and attack him to death. They would say that it was his sister's doing, but they would want to pin it all on him. All of this would be erased if this good younger sister died. If she died in the hands of her son-in-law, there would be nothing to say. This was the price she had to pay for doing such a stupid thing. Li Hongming looked at Princess Min Xiang with a murderous gaze for a long time. The maidservants and nannies kneeling by the side trembled. In the end, Li Hongming didn't strangle Princess Min Xiang to death. Many people knew that he had entered the princess residence. Once he entered, Min Xiang died. Even if nothing happened, people would think that there was something wrong. Moreover, many people from that brother-in-law's family were still outside. Therefore, not only could he not do anything, but he also had to ensure that his sister was fine. However, it was difficult for Li Hongming to get rid of the anger in his heart. If he didn't do anything, he would be the one who would feel uncomfortable. Men, drag out all the servants of the princess and flog them 30 times. All the guards of the princess residence are to be flogged 50 times. Your Highness, please spare us, Your Highness. Everyone kowtowed and begged for mercy. If it weren't for Gu Shi's reputation, Li Hongming would have killed them. What was the use of begging for mercy now? Li Hongming's reason for dealing with these people couldn't be any more justified. When his master did something wrong, he didn't stop him. Instead, he helped the tyrant. He deserved to be beaten to death. All of them were dragged out. Soon, screams sounded in the courtyard. No one gagged their mouths. Clearly, venting was one thing, but it was more for some people to see. Princess Min Xiang fainted mainly because she was frightened. Therefore, she woke up very quickly. After waking up, that sharp pain instantly attacked her. Although her ear was torn off after she fainted, the feeling of being bitten was very clear. She subconsciously reached out to touch it. It was completely different from what she had expected. Her consciousness was instantly awakened. Even if it was wrapped in several layers, it shouldn't be flat. Princess Min Xiang's face was lifeless. She even ignored the pain. You lost an ear. Princess with only one ear, doesn't it feel good? You will be the center of attention in the future. Are you happy? Prince Rui sat by the bed and said emotionlessly. Princess Min Xiang screamed hysterically. She wanted to tear off the white cloth on her head as if she was crazy. Sometimes, if you don't pay attention to some small injuries, it will lead to death. If you want to die, then go ahead. You can just die like this. It seemed to be a provocation, but it also seemed to be the truth. Princess Min Xiang finally calmed down a little. She raised her head to look at Li Hongming. There was a trace of disbelief in her eyes. This person who spoke so coldly didn't seem to be the brother who doted on her in the past. He couldn't even compare to a stranger. He was more like an enemy. The fear of dying hadn't completely disappeared. Facing such a brother, Princess Min Xiang only felt extremely wronged. It was bad enough that he didn't help her vent her anger, but he actually spoke to her like this. Li Hongming, am I really your sister? You actually treat me like this? I will tell mother. Tell mother? If mother was in front of you now, she would probably beat you to death. You idiot who can't do anything right. What did you say? Princess Min Xiang pounced forward, wanting to scratch him. Li Hongming turned slightly and grabbed her arm, fiercely throwing her back onto the bed. It's fine that I spoiled you, but I didn't expect that I raised you to be so brainless. You are a princess, a golden branch and jade leaf. If someone did something wrong to you, they don't need to do anything. There will naturally be someone to stand up for you. It's fine that you did it yourself, but you even made a fuss about it. If you aren't an idiot, then what are you? This time you caused mother and this prince to be so miserable. You still hope that mother will protect you? Without mother and this prince, would you still be the most respected among your sisters? You have offended many people in the palace. Do you know what it feels like to lose power and have people hit you when you are down? Princess Min Xiang was stunned for a moment. She probably didn't understand how she had harmed her mother and brother. Li Hongming walked forward and grabbed her hair, forcing her to raise her head. You still don't know what you did wrong? Princess Min Xiang had already realized it in a daze. However, what did I do wrong? It was that damn cheap man who deceived me and betrayed me first. He deserves to be chopped into minced meat. Princess Min Xiang roared hysterically. https://11/11807/8954609. HTML chapter error. Chapter 425. At this time, Princess Min Xiang finally felt some fear and terror. She also vaguely knew that she might have really done something wrong. The pain on her scalp also told her that this elder brother of hers was not as gentle and good-tempered as he usually was. That kind of coldness from inside out made her feel unfamiliar. Thus, Princess Min Xiang grabbed Li Hongming's hand in an attempt to relieve the pain, but her body couldn't help but tremble. Li Hongming let go of her and even gently patted her head, as if he was apologizing and comforting her for pulling her hair. Min Xiang, Imperial Mother protected you too well. She didn't let you know about many things and didn't let you participate. That's why you are so naive and ignorant today. I didn't think there was a problem in the past. You are a girl after all, it doesn't matter if you are pampered. You are this prince's only sister. However, only today did I realize that I really made a huge mistake and regret it. Min Xiang, actually living like this is an embarrassment. If you die, you can still make use of your remaining value. Princess Min Xiang might have thought of committing suicide when she discovered that her body was incomplete, but now that Li Hongming said this, she didn't want to die at all. So what if her body was incomplete? She was still a princess. She could still live a luxurious life. Even if others looked at her strangely, no one dared to say a word in front of her. Especially after experiencing the fear of death at the hands of the prince consort, she cherished her life very much. She didn't want to die, she definitely didn't want to die. However, the feeling that Li Hongming gave her just now was too terrifying. Princess Min Xiang also knew that if she went against him, she definitely wouldn't have a good ending. Especially now that there was no one else in the room other than the two of them. This elder brother of hers was constantly talking about death. She didn't know what would happen if she angered him. Imperial brother, I know I was wrong. I was just too angry and didn't consider the consequences. I didn't want to cause trouble for Imperial Mother and you. Believe me, Prince Rui naturally believed this. After all of Min Xiang's confidence came from them. She was just too angry to consider the consequences? It was because she had never thought about this problem. Speaking of which, it was their fault for giving Min Xiang the illusion that they had the absolute advantage. That was why she had been so unscrupulous. Moreover, even if he had told her about the serious consequences, she probably still hadn't realized the seriousness of the matter. Imperial brother, I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. You and Imperial Mother must have a way to solve this problem, right? As long as this matter is resolved, I promise to be obedient. I will listen to you and Imperial Mother. Imperial brother, Imperial Mother only has the two of us. If I die, Imperial Mother will definitely be sad. You won't have the heart to do that, right? Li Hongming listened coldly as Min Xiang acted like a clown in front of him. That's right. Even now, Princess Min Xiang still hadn't truly repented. She acted submissively just to save her own life. If she had really sorted out this matter, she wouldn't be like this. Seeing that Princess Min Xiang was getting stiffer and stiffer, to the point where she almost couldn't hold it in anymore, Li Hongming slowly said, Min Xiang, you better remember what you said now. If you do it again in the future, I will make sure you die a horrible death. Princess Min Xiang's body trembled. She could feel that Li Hongming wasn't joking with her at all. Li Hongming was thinking about something else. If Min Xiang died, this matter would be completely resolved. However, there were pros and cons to this matter. After all, the impact of what Min Xiang had done was already present. Even if this matter was resolved, the consequences wouldn't disappear. If accumulated, it could become a dangerous factor in the future. Li Hongming's men knocked lightly on the door. Your Highness, someone from the palace is here. His Majesty summons the princess and the prince consort to enter the palace. Understood. Li Hongming already had an idea. As for his Mufei, he wasn't worried. Even if he didn't explain the matter to her, she wouldn't make any mistakes. Change your clothes and prepare to enter the palace. Princess Min Xiang was afraid to see Lu Qingdi at this time. She subconsciously pulled on Li Hongming's sleeve. Imperial brother, what should we do? What should we do? What should we do? Naturally, do what should be done. You don't have to do anything. You just have to remain silent. Mufei and I will take care of the rest. Remember, if you still want to live a life of luxury in the future, then no matter what happens, you better keep your mouth shut. If you can't help but say something that shouldn't be said, Mufei and I won't care about you. Remember? Li Hongming's face was indescribably cold. Princess Min Xiang nodded vigorously. None of Princess Min Xiang's servants escaped punishment. However, as long as they didn't completely collapse, they had to crawl up to serve their master and enter the palace with their master. Princess Min Xiang needed to be tidied up, but it couldn't be too much. It had to be just right. After all, they needed to play the emotional card at this time. It didn't take long or short. When they saw Lu Qingdi, the eunuchs were still doing their own things. Lu Qingdi was still dealing with the mountain of memorials. Under the imperial table, noble consort Su knelt with a straight back but looked very weak. She clearly didn't cry or speak, but it made people feel extreme sadness. The fifth prince consort was carried in. He had lost a lot of blood but was still able to stay awake. It was a surprise. Seeing the black mass of people kneeling either injured or crippled, Luchingdi's face couldn't help but darken. Then he smashed a pile of things on the imperial table. https://11/118078954610. Chapter 426. The Emperor was furious, but everyone kept quiet out of fear. Speak. What's going on? Think carefully before you speak. I won't give you a second chance, Luchingdi said expressionlessly. Because of this sentence, Li Hongming couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. As a father and husband, he wouldn't demote them, imprison them, or banish them to the cold palace because of this matter. However, if they didn't handle it well, they would lose the emperor's favor and the emperor's heart. He never thought that his imperial father chose the heir based on reason and not emotion. He favored Li Hongyuan, but he would never give the throne to him. However, Li Hongyuan was a special case. It was different for the other sons. The situation was very complicated, but it was absolutely impossible for them to completely lose the emperor's heart. At this time, imperial concubine Su was also very nervous. She was actually more worried than her son. It was far easier and more common for the emperor to abolish a concubine than to kill a son. Even a simple breach of etiquette in front of the emperor could demote a concubine and banish her to the cold palace. If there was no estrangement between her and Yuan, imperial concubine Su wouldn't even be worried at all. Thinking about it carefully, similar things seemed to have happened in the past. However, it seemed to be insignificant. Moreover, it disappeared because of Yuan. Because it didn't cause any waves, imperial concubine Su didn't have a deep memory of it. Now those memories suddenly became clear. At this moment, imperial concubine Su wished that her relationship with her adopted son was still the same as before. Then he might have already entered the palace by now. Therefore, at this time, imperial concubine Su actually thought of Li Hongyuan. How laughable and lamentable. Then it was hard to say whether imperial concubine Su's true feelings for Li Hongyuan were because he was useful or because she received a return for her efforts. Or perhaps the two were intertwined. However, she met Li Hongyuan, who was reborn. Now that imperial concubine Su had no value, she could only suffer a tragedy. Of course, for someone like imperial concubine Su, no matter how much her heart churned, it couldn't be seen on her face. Outside, regardless of whether she was happy or angry, she would only show people what she wanted them to see. As she grew older, this skill became more and more profound. The problem now was that they had not colluded. The people below might not understand their intentions. If they spouted nonsense, the consequences would be quite serious. Are you mute? Luchingdi slapped the table heavily. Minxiang, speak. Princess Minxiang subconsciously trembled. She raised her head and secretly glanced at Luchingdi. Even though Princess Minxiang wasn't a person who was good at reading people's expressions, she could clearly feel Luchingdi's coldness at this moment. Especially those cold eyes. It was completely different from what she remembered. Facing noble consort Su's and even Li Hongming's anger, Princess Minxiang subconsciously didn't care. But Luchingdi was different. As long as he wasn't a puppet emperor, as imperial children and concubines, he knew very well what would happen if he lost the favor of the emperor. How many sisters and brothers had been bullied by her without the emperor's favor? There was nothing more frightening to Princess Minxiang than this. Imperial father? With a bit of grievance and a bit of coquettishness, she put on the most delicate and naive expression. This was the appearance that Luchingdi liked the most. Minxiang, have you forgotten that you are already a married woman? How can you be like this? Princess Minxiang's expression instantly stiffened. She looked quite amused. After a while, she probably thought of Li Hongming's words and didn't speak anymore. She just sobbed weakly. She looked weak and innocent. Also, with the white cloth wrapped around her head, she looked quite pitiful. Luchingdi was indifferent. It was obvious that there were so many people in his harem. In order to win his love, they had used all kinds of methods. When he was happy or if he was willing to love someone, no matter if it was his concubines or children, he could accept it. They didn't even need to do too much. But when he didn't want to accept it, it was useless no matter how much they did. Princess Minxiang cried and didn't speak. Luchingdi also didn't continue speaking, but his expression didn't soften at all. What about the prince consort? Don't you want to say anything? Just like how he ignored Princess Minxiang's ears and the marks on her neck, Luchingdi also ignored the fifth prince consort's broken arm, his deformed face, and his eye that was so swollen that it could not be opened. Actually, Luchingdi was a bit surprised by the fifth prince consort's pitiful appearance. But the anger in his heart suppressed everything. Originally, it hadn't been 2 days since the birthday. What happened on that day hadn't been investigated yet. The envoys from various countries were still in the capital. After all, after the birthday they should be discussing the benefits between countries. For example, some cooperation, some trade, and many other things. When they couldn't do two things at the same time, someone actually caused trouble and made it known to everyone. They made a fool of themselves in front of the public. He used to think that his fifth daughter wasn't bad. Now he knew that she was an impulsive idiot. Although he couldn't say that he knew what kind of person his consort was, it was really disappointing for her to raise such a daughter. In the current situation, the fifth prince consort indeed had the most right to speak. But he only felt that his entire body was cold. Even his bones were cold. His vision darkened and his broken arm seemed to be in so much pain that he couldn't feel it. His consciousness was also a bit blurry. Since Liqingdi allowed him to speak, he naturally spoke without any rules. He spoke intermittently, one sentence after another. However, since Liqingdi did not speak, everyone could only listen quietly. Even if there were no rules, everyone could still learn a lot of information. The fifth prince consort recounted his humiliation, his dignity being trampled on, and his anger. Ever since he married the princess, he wasn't like a human anymore. He was worse than a beast. As he spoke, he started to cry. He cried until snot and tears flowed down his face. He didn't have any image to speak of. The fifth prince consort was a young master of a large family. Although he was a bit cowardly, his upbringing and etiquette wouldn't be wrong. Looking at him now, it could be said that this man was really about to collapse. In the process of the fifth prince consort's narration, the one with the greatest emotional fluctuations was Princess Min Xiang. After all, she wasn't the kind of person who could control her emotions. Because of her rage, her face was distorted. The things that the fifth prince consort said most likely seriously challenged her authority. She almost exploded on the spot. It was only when Consort Su shouted at her that Princess Min Xiang calmed down. However, she no longer cried weakly. She kept her head down and her emotions couldn't be seen clearly. The fifth prince consort fainted in the end. His parents couldn't care much and hurriedly supported him. They cried their hearts out. However, they were still in front of the emperor and restrained themselves. They didn't let their emotions out. Liqingdi rubbed his throbbing temples and had someone call for the imperial physician. What is this about the prince consort having a mistress? In the end, this was the root of everything. Before Min Xiang got married, the imperial family didn't know. To put it seriously, this was deceiving the emperor. This was definitely a serious crime. However, everything still depended on how Liqingdi viewed this matter. Your Majesty, the prince consort has always been a coward. He has followed the rules since he was young and rarely did anything out of line. We didn't know that he had a mistress and had a child. He also didn't have the guts to say this. After marrying the princess, he originally planned to send everyone out of the capital and never see them again. However, the things that the princess did were truly. The prince consort's heart was filled with pain. Especially when the princess aborted the child without saying anything. The princess wasn't willing to give birth to a child for the prince consort and didn't allow the prince consort to have a child. However, we couldn't just watch the prince consort die. Your Majesty, our branch only had this one child. Would the princess be willing to adopt a child from the same clan? We had no choice but to let the mother and child stay for 3 days. The fifth prince consort's mother sobbed softly as she explained the matter. At this time they didn't dare to lie or add fuel to the fire. Liqingdi's gaze fell heavily on Princess Min Xiang. What happened today? It seemed that he didn't intend to seek confirmation from Min Xiang at all. Imperial father, it's not like this. Could it be that you don't even trust your own daughter and trust an outsider? Princess Min Xiang was also anxious. Shut up. I don't want to hear you speak now. Where are Min Xiang's wet nurse and guards? Tell me one by one. If you hide anything from me. Naturally, no one dared to speak nonsense. The process of the matter was very clear. Good. You are truly my good daughter. I always thought that even if you were a little willful, your heart wasn't bad. I didn't expect you to be so vicious. https://11/11807/8954611. Chapter 427. Imperial Father, it really isn't like that. Believe me, Liqingdi's face was cold. He looked at Princess Min Xiang as if he was looking at a dead person. Clearly, he didn't believe Princess Min Xiang's explanation at all. Your Majesty, Imperial concubine Su struggled fiercely in her heart and couldn't hold it in anymore. What happened to Min Xiang today is all this concubine's fault. This concubine didn't teach her well. As she spoke, she sobbed. It was the kind of grief that was forced to endure. She was disappointed in Princess Min Xiang and blamed herself. Your Majesty, it's all this concubine's fault. Min Xiang has already been taught a lesson. If your Majesty wants to punish, then punish this concubine. It's the mother's fault for not teaching her daughter well. It's the mother's fault. It's the mother's fault. Imperial Father, this son is also responsible for this matter. I usually don't care much about Min Xiang and didn't know many things. That's why she kept making mistakes. If this son took some time to ask, even if I only found some clues, things wouldn't have reached this stage today. Li Hongming also had a pained expression. To put it bluntly, the mother and son were retreating in order to advance. In this kind of situation, not only could they not place righteousness before family, they also had to absolve Min Xiang. It wasn't just related to family. There was another factor. Min Xiang was a princess, the emperor's daughter. Don't say things like, a prince who commits a crime is punished the same as a commoner. That was only said for ordinary people. Otherwise, how could she be called a noble? Furthermore, she was injured by the prince consort. This kind of method wasn't wrong, but there was a prerequisite. It depended on whether Lu Qingdi would buy it. Princess Min Xiang's matter was a scandal of the imperial family. If all the princesses were like her, then the princesses after her wouldn't be able to find a slightly better husband. After all, no one was willing to follow in the footsteps of the fifth prince consort. Normal women were jealous and vicious. How could they be compared to Princess Min Xiang? Alright, the situation in the inner residence and the women in the inner residence, you could never underestimate them. Some people's methods were definitely worse than Princess Min Xiang's. Princess Min Xiang's biggest mistake was to make a big fuss and bring it to the surface. It didn't matter if others didn't know, but if others knew, it was a scandal and she lost the face of the imperial family. However, if Princess Min Xiang was dealt with like this, where would the dignity of the royal family be? We haven't said anything yet, but all of you are in a hurry to ask for forgiveness. Lu Qingdi was different from what they had expected. However, imperial concubine Su and her son did not dare to continue. In fact, this kind of dilemma made them feel uneasy for no reason. In short, one thing was certain, and that was that this was definitely not a good sign. The scene fell into a strange silence which made people panic. Except for Lu Qingdi, who was in control of life and death, even the eunuchs felt a little suffocated. Until one of Lu Qingdi's trusted eunuchs came in. Your Majesty, we've interrogated the other people in 5th Princess Mansion. It turned out that the other people from Princess Min Xiang's residence were also brought into the palace. According to the results of the interrogation, the eunuch paused, the prince consort is a pushover in the princess's residence. The last 4 words were very soft, but everyone heard it very clearly in this quiet place, which showed that the people around Princess Min Xiang were still holding back. A pushover? Lu Qingdi tapped the imperial table with his fingertips. The prince consort of Qi Yuan has fallen to this point? As for those princes, no matter if they were from the sisters or the daughters, Lu Qingdi was absolutely satisfied with no more than 3 of them. In Lu Qingdi's opinion, even if Princess Shang's future was ruined and many people were unwilling to marry Princess Shang, there were still people like the prince consort of Great Elder Princess. However, in his eyes, each of his sons-in-law was really a failure. Now it seemed that it was not just a matter of future. His daughter was not excellent and was really inferior to Great Elder Princess. In addition, with Min Xiang, it was no wonder that no one liked her. The daughter-in-law of the royal family was a member of the royal family, and the son-in-law of the royal family was half a member of the royal family. Even a cowardly man had dignity when he was insulted by a group of lowly people. No wonder he couldn't bear it and hurt the princess. To some extent, Princess Min Xiang deserved it. Lu Qingdi also thought that Princess Min Xiang deserved it, but there were thousands of reasons why the prince consort hurt the princess, no matter how much he paid for it. Prince Rue left his post without permission, regardless of the severity, and was fined 1 year of his salary and suspended from his position in the Ministry of Personnel. Princess Min Xiang was vicious and immoral. She reflected on her mistakes behind closed doors and was ordered to be re-educated by 2 etiquette instructors. Princess Wu Gongma deceived the emperor, offended his superiors and hurt the princess. He was sent to prison without pardon for the rest of his life. However, considering that he was seriously injured, he was allowed to be confined at home and not allowed to leave for the rest of his life. Everyone in the 5th princess's manor did not try to dissuade the princess, but instead helped the tyrant. Those with low status were sent back to the Ministry of Internal Affairs for severe punishment. Those without low status were sentenced to 3 years of hard labor. As soon as Luqingdi's words came out, no matter how the people below felt, they could only say, "Thank you, Your Majesty." For the fifth prince consort and his family, this punishment was actually not a punishment. They should be crying tears of joy, but they couldn't be happy too early. The fifth prince consort's current situation was not optimistic, and he might be in danger of losing his life. Princess Min Xiang's face was ashen. If noble consort Su hadn't stopped her in time, she would have openly disobeyed the imperial edict. In reality, noble consort Su and Prince Rue wanted to strangle her to death. The ones whose hearts were truly bleeding were the two of them. For noble consort Su, the empress wasn't here, so the palace affairs were left to her and Qin Shu Fei. Now that Qin Shu Fei had fallen, she should be the only one in charge. Although there was still consort Wei Xian as the former princess of Wei, she was just a decorative vase. This was definitely the best opportunity to plant one of their own. Now that she had seized power, she would be in seclusion for half a year. Of course, this seclusion didn't mean that noble consort Su wasn't allowed to leave the Jade Palace, but that she wouldn't have the chance to serve him in bed for half a year. Even if Luqingdi went to the Jade Palace now, noble consort Su would arrange for others to serve him most of the time, but that was the Jade Palace's favor. The seclusion targeted Luqingdi. He wouldn't be able to step into the Jade Palace for half a year. In the imperial harem, no matter how luxurious it was or how high the status of the concubines was, if the emperor didn't step in, it was equivalent to a cold palace. Prince Rue was even more sullen. Hearing Luqingdi's words, he was meddling in other people's business. He had thrown aside the important matters at hand to meddle in these inter-court disputes, and directly lost his job at the Ministry of Personnel. He had worked so hard to enter the Ministry of Personnel, to gain a foothold, to know more things and to have more say, but now it was all for naught. As for the people on Princess Min Xiang's side, who would care about them? Emperor Prince Jin requests an audience. When Luqingdi heard this, the expression on his face eased a little. Not to mention consort Su, even Li Hongming couldn't help but reveal a hopeful expression. Li Hongyuan came in and looked straight ahead. "Greetings to Fu Huang. Why did you enter the palace at this time?" Luqingdi asked. "I Ken heard that something happened to Min Xiang, so I entered the palace to take a look." "You are considerate, but Zhen has already dealt with this matter. You should do what you should do, don't worry about it." "Fu Huang, can I Ken know how to deal with it? What does a grown man care about these things? Quickly scram." Luqingdi waved his hand impatiently. https://11/1180/11807/8968022. Chapter 428. Li Hongyuan hesitated, and then slipped away. What did he come here for? Well, it was purely for show. Of course, it had nothing to do with Imperial Consort Su. It was for Luqingdi to see. Even if he was unhappy, he would still say that he was thinking about his mother. Then he would give Imperial Consort Su and her son a little bit of hope and then ruthlessly crush it. Even if the two of them vomited blood, it had nothing to do with a certain king of hell. Even if they knew that he was acting, so what? Li Hongyuan didn't care at all. In fact, if he wanted to completely fall out with them, Li Hongyuan only needed to say a word. However, they needed him and didn't dare to fall out with him. Even if they knew his true colors, even if they hated him so much that they wanted to tear him apart, they didn't dare to do anything in private. To be honest, if it wasn't for the upcoming war, Li Hongyuan wouldn't care even if he completely broke the window paper now. As for whether Luqingdi would suspect, after all, the king of hell suddenly became obedient, Li Hongyuan naturally had a way to make his father feel that it was reasonable. Even if it wasn't reasonable, he would fill in a reasonable reason. Anyway, it wasn't the first time that Luqingdi had exonerated his son. It could only be said that Li Hongyuan's image had long been deeply ingrained in people's hearts. Especially in front of Luqingdi, he really pretended too well. Li Hongyuan paused midway and turned to go to the Sweet Dew Palace. Although the possibility of seeing the imperial noble consort now was very small, he still wanted to go and take a look. As for whether he would attract criticism by going to the Sweet Dew Palace for 2 days in a row, it was completely out of his consideration. Anyway, he was the king of hell. Knowing that Qin Shufei was awake and that Gong Jiu was performing acupuncture on her, Li Hongyuan directly went to the inner hall and sat on the same couch as yesterday. The moment their eyes met, Li Hongyuan knew that this was Qin Shufei herself. However, from her subtle expression, she probably knew that he had seen the imperial Gui Fei. Logically speaking, Qin Shufei could accept that there was a ghost in her body because she knew that this ghost could not occupy her body. Now it was different. The imperial noble consort had unintentionally controlled this body once. There might be a second or third time. This meant that there was a risk of the ghost taking over her body. Would she still be indifferent? Greetings to imperial concubine Shu. Li Hongyuan bowed. Although Li Hongyuan was a hooligan, he still had the best upbringing in his bones. He was meticulous in his appearance and perfect in his bearing. As long as he was willing, he was the best example of etiquette. No one could find any flaws in him, let alone any obvious mistakes. You may dispense with the formalities. Qin Shufei's expression was the same as before. There was nothing different about her. However, the poison this time had damaged her vitality. She looked a lot weaker. Qin Shufei looked like this on the surface, but it was hard to determine what she was thinking. After all, she had stayed in the palace for 20 to 30 years. Although she was not particularly favored, she was able to maintain her position without an heir. Her thoughts and methods were extraordinary. Controlling her emotions was a piece of cake for her. Li Hongyuan's eyes were sharp, but he could not read her mind. However, Li Hongyuan did not care about Qin Shufei's true thoughts. As the saying goes, counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. This matter could not escape his control. Gong Jiu finished the acupuncture in his hand and stood up. Greetings to Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan raised his hand. How is Imperial Concubine Shu's condition? Replying to Wang Ye, the current condition is still good. After careful recuperation, she should be able to recover 70 to 80%. Li Hongyuan frowned slightly. Can't recover completely? This commoner is incompetent. In front of Li Hongyuan, Gong Jiu and the others never tried to explain anything. Wang Ye's requirements are too high. Even a divine doctor would be helpless. Gong Dafu's art is outstanding. If it was not for him, Ben Gong would not have been able to return. To be able to recover 70 to 80% is already quite good. Qin Shufei said with a faint smile. Qin Shufei also knew that Qin Wang did not really care about her. Although he would still let people do their best to treat her, he would not personally care for her. However, this was also human nature. In the end, there was no relationship between her and him. Li Hongyuan did not say anything. After all, what Qin Shufei said was the truth. Wang Ye, he entered the palace today? Qin Shufei did not linger on this point and changed the topic. There was nothing to hide about Princess Min Xiang and the fifth prince consort's matter. Even if Lu Qingdi gave a gag order at most, he would not let the common people know about the follow-up. Princess Min Xiang's arrest with great fanfare and the parade through the streets, how many people saw it? And what happened in the Princess Fu? To be honest, although the princess did not have any role in the fight for the throne and basically did not participate, it did not mean that these people would be completely ignored. Therefore, the Princess Fu to some extent was a sieve. There were not too many loopholes. Therefore, this matter could not be hidden from the fifth prince consort's family. After Qin Shufei finished listening, she looked at Li Hongyuan and smiled, but did not say anything. Obviously, in her view, this matter was Li Hongyuan's handiwork. As for the result of Lu Qingdi's punishment, she believed that she would know very soon. There was no need to inquire about anything. Li Hongyuan's main purpose was to see if he could still see his biological mother. Since he could not see her, there was nothing to say to Qin Shufei. Naturally, he prepared to leave. Nyang, rest well. I will take my leave first. Qin Shufei nodded but hesitated. Wang Ye, please take care. Even if it's for, no matter who it is. Li Hongyuan naturally understood. Looking at the meaning, Qin Shufei did not seem to have any grudges. Nyang, rest assured. Ben Wang cherishes his life very much. After leaving the Sweet Dew Palace, Li Hongyuan was somewhat silent on the way out of the palace. Although in Mu Gonggong's eyes he did not feel anything different. After leaving the palace, he stood in front of the carriage. Just as he was about to get in, he suddenly turned around. Have you sent word back from White Dragon Temple? Replying to Your Highness, Master Liaochen is not at White Dragon Temple. He went to travel again half a month ago. However, according to the abbot of White Dragon Temple, they received news that Master Liaochen will return in 3 to 5 days. Master Liaochen also said in the letter that if an esteemed guest is looking for him, they should be patient, said an E. No matter how one looked at it, the latter part of the letter seemed to have been specially sent for Li Hongyuan. Otherwise, the abbot would not have sent Li Hongyuan's people to send back such a message. Moreover, Master Liaochen had always been elusive. Every time he traveled, he would travel for 3 to 5 months. It was common for him to travel for half a year. Now that he had returned in just half a month, it seemed like he had come back especially for Li Hongyuan. Although an E and the others did not know why their master was looking for Master Liaochen, they did not know. Li Hongyuan boarded the carriage and closed his eyes to rest. Regarding Master Liaochen, it was not easy to come to a conclusion. No one knew how old he had lived. He had a prominent reputation, but he was very low-key. However, he was a genuine senior monk, not someone who fished for fame. It was as if there was nothing in the world that he could not see through and did not know. Returning to Jinqin Wang Fu, Jingwan was nestled on the couch reading a book. When she heard movement, she raised her head to see Li Hongyuan coming in. She was a little surprised. Yuan, you're back so soon? It's just a trip around. It's nothing much. How long could it take? Thinking about it, it was also true. It was just a trip around. How did it go? I don't know the specifics. I was a step late, so I didn't bother to inquire. However, Fu Huang's mood is not good and can't be helped. You were deliberately a step late and went too early. Are you going to plead for leniency or not? If you plead for leniency, you'll be sullen. If you don't plead for leniency, Fu Huang will suspect that you're really cold-blooded and heartless. Wouldn't it be better to wait until the matter is settled before going? It'll be over. Jingwan had an expression that said she had already seen through him. Li Hongyuan laughed in spite of himself. He sat down next to Jingwan and pulled her into his arms, stroking her hair. Whatever Wanwan says, it's what it is. Towards Li Hongyuan's attitude that was like coaxing a child, Jingwan was too lazy to roll her eyes. She nestled in his arms and prepared to continue reading. That's right, Wanwan, in a few days we'll go to White Dragon Temple. Going to White Dragon Temple at this time, is there a reason? There's something I need to talk to Master Liaochen about. I'll tell you the details later. The only thing that Li Hongyuan was still hiding from Jingwan was probably his rebirth. It wasn't that he didn't want to tell her, nor was it that he couldn't tell her. It was just that in his opinion the time wasn't right yet. At the very least, he should wait until Wanwan had passed the death tribulation, and everything was settled. Moreover, Li Hongyuan was a little narrow-minded. Didn't his sweetheart not tell him about her special experience? Therefore he could only postpone any matters related to it. Just like yesterday when her husband asked her to leave to speak with Qin Shufei alone, Jingwan didn't think much of it. Having one or two small secrets didn't mean that they didn't trust each other. However, is it alright to go to White Dragon Temple at this time? After Wanwan's birthday, the other country's envoys will need at least 10 days to leave the capital. Your husband is just an idle person. Everything has nothing to do with me. What problem can there be? Therefore, this was really a never-failing excuse. Alright then, how long will you be staying? I'll have someone prepare some things. I'm not sure yet. If things go well, I'll probably be able to return on the same day. If it's troublesome, it'll be hard to determine the time. Just bring some things. If it takes a long time, I'll have someone send it over. He had his own courtyard in White Dragon Temple, but it was a temple after all. Even if White Dragon Temple was prosperous, it couldn't change the fact that they were poor. If possible, Li Hongyuan naturally didn't want Jingwan to suffer in the middle of winter. Jingwan was really curious about something that even the King of Hell couldn't be sure about. The next day, Jingwan wore a more capable outfit, put on a cloak and went for the appointment. She arranged to meet with the Gold Treasury's envoy at another building. It was a place where scholars often gathered. Of course, many noble ladies were willing to meet there occasionally. The environment was quiet and there were many books. Jingwan wanted to understand the Gold Treasury's culture, and the Gold Treasury's people naturally wanted to understand more about Qi Yuan, especially the envoy who was very interested in Qi Yuan's culture. Under normal circumstances, if they were alone, even if they could enter, they wouldn't be able to borrow any books. However, with Jingwan there, it was definitely different. As long as it wasn't some special books that couldn't be leaked, she could basically borrow them. In addition, that place was open and magnanimous, so it wouldn't arouse suspicion. Jingwan's carriage was more low-key. The symbol of Jin Wangfu was still the same. There weren't many people around her, but the people who served her were capable and the guards were also first class. When she entered the gate of the other building, Jingwan met several women. Two of them were the daughters-in-law of a certain Juan Wang's family, one of them was a county princess of the imperial family, and the other two were daughters of officials. One of them was the daughter of the Minister of Works. The man who became a first-rank official in his early 40s, in Jingwan's opinion, was definitely a capable person. Of course, his EQ was definitely high. In the officialdom, it wasn't good if your EQ couldn't keep up. When they saw Jingwan, they hurriedly greeted, "Greetings to Wang Fei Nyang Yang." No need for formalities. Jingwan gathered her cloak and chuckled, "It's quite unexpected to meet you on such a cold day." Several people also laughed, "Isn't Wang Fei Nyang Yang the same?" Is Nyang Nyang also here to admire the plum blossoms? That's not it. We're just interested in the Gold Treasury's culture, so we made an appointment with the Gold Treasury's envoy. We didn't know about the plum blossoms in this Four Directions resort before. Chapter 429. Everyone's eyes lit up. To be honest, it was difficult for women to not be interested in those who knew something about the hidden gold, especially these noble ladies. However, they didn't dare to show their interest openly. Not only that, if they mentioned it openly, they would be reprimanded and ostracized, which was in line with the rules. Your Highness has only lived in the capital for a short period of time, so it's not surprising that you don't know about it. Speaking of which, the plum blossoms in the square courtyard can be considered a scenic spot in the capital, especially in winter. There are many people who come here to admire the flowers. Although they are mostly white plum blossoms, the quality is quite good. It's a good choice for poetry or painting. If that's the case, then I'll have to take a good look today. However, speaking of plum blossoms, I heard from my grandfather that Minister Zhong's family has the most complete variety of plum blossoms, and there are many rare and famous ones. Every winter, Miss Zhong will be able to feast her eyes. Jingwan's gaze fell on the woman in the warm yellow dress. Your Highness, you're too kind. Father does have a lot of plum blossoms, but he's really stingy. It's good enough that he'll let us see them once every 3 to 5 days. If you want to break off a branch and put it in a vase, then don't even think about it. A few years ago, I secretly broke off a branch, and as a result, I was beaten in the palm of my hand and had to kneel for an hour. Every winter, my brothers and sisters want to invite good friends to a banquet to admire the plum blossoms, but they think that we're stingy. In fact, it's my father who doesn't allow it at all. He values those plum blossoms more than us, his children and grandchildren. Everyone says that the younger son is the eldest grandson, but in our family, my eldest nephew is ranked behind the plum blossoms in my father's heart. Everyone covered their mouths and laughed. However, that was the Minister of Works after all, so they naturally didn't know how to respond. Jingwan walked in unhurriedly, and these people surrounded her without any intention of leaving. Jingwan roughly understood their intentions, at least it wasn't convenient for them to say it out loud. It wasn't a shameful thing to meet the envoys of the Hidden Gold Kingdom. It wouldn't be a problem to have a few more people around. Therefore, Jingwan didn't say anything and chatted with them. They had talked about plum blossoms earlier, and now they were talking about plum blossoms. The others looked at each other. Obviously, they didn't think that Jingwan didn't know what they meant. Looking at her attitude, it was obvious that she tacitly agreed. They smiled tacitly. When it comes to raising flowers and plants, Princess Consort is the most qualified to speak. My father praised her more than once and admitted defeat. Especially when he saw the borrowed Kun Fang Chiu from Lord Luo. There was a period of time when he spent all his free time in it. According to my father, it's not easy to borrow the Kun Fang Chiu from Lord Luo. If you don't quickly finish reading it and return it, don't expect to get another one. I also secretly took a look at it twice. It's really well written and the inserts inside are also exquisite. Miss Zhong's gaze fell on Jingwan. Her meaning couldn't be more obvious. It must be said that this woman's things wouldn't easily leave the inner residence. However, those were only her elders. Moreover, the book was taken out from Luo Peishan's hands. After leaving the inner residence, she had to return it the same way. Thus there was no taboo. Jingwan said modestly, "If Miss Zhong likes it, I'll give you 2 books of beauties later." That Miss Zhong was pleasantly surprised. Influenced by her old man, although she couldn't say that she was addicted to this aspect, she indeed liked it very much. However, she was still a bit hesitant. It must be known that Jin Qinhuang Fei's Chuanxiang chart was quite popular within a certain range. It couldn't be easily obtained. Borrowing a copy to take a look was far from being comparable to the original. For people who always strive for perfection after seeing the original, they didn't want to copy this product. It was only meticulously crafted by Her Highness? Not really. I usually have a lot of free time, and when I raise those flowers and plants, I have a habit of organizing the process and compiling it into a book. Then I'll have to thank esteemed Wang Fei. Miss Zhong's face lit up with joy. When she returned, she could show off to her father. At that time, her father would be envious. If the benefits were not enough, he would not even look at it. If the benefits were enough, he would definitely not give it to him. You're welcome. Jingwan chuckled. What an innocent and unaffected girl. Fortunately, she was not taken by Prince Kong. Even if the marriage was delayed because of this, even if it was delayed for 1 or 2 years, it was still better than jumping into that fire pit. It must be said that Jingwan's ability in this aspect was something that other people had more or less heard about. raising flowers and plants, although not everyone liked it very much, but for people like them, it was normal to have 1 or 2 pots on hand. At this time they naturally asked Jingwan. Jingwan was also not stingy. She told them everything she knew and told them some tips. She didn't say much, but the people who listened benefited a lot. Because they had already arranged a place, although Jingwan was not familiar with this place, she could casually call for someone in the pavilion to lead the way. However, there was a ready-made guide now. It was naturally not suitable to be outside in the middle of winter. According to Jingwan's identity, it was not a problem to reserve a private room. Although there were many people in this kind of place, there would always be a reserved place prepared for high officials and nobles. Jingwan's privilege was more than enough. The private room here was different from the nashi room in the restaurant. It was not completely closed, but was separated by a treasure pavilion. Occasionally there were some screens and some other decorations. It looked elegant and charming. When Jingwan saw it for the first time, she was a little surprised. The people from Tsangjin had already arrived. There were 3 people. Jingwan stepped forward. The people who were with her consciously went to the side. It was enough to eavesdrop, there was no need to participate. At the birthday banquet, Jingwan could be considered to be in the limelight in various senses. Therefore, when facing the envoys from Tsangjin, there was naturally no, "Who are you?" situation. Greetings to Prince Consort Jin. When the 3 of them saw her, they hurriedly stood up to greet her. In Tsangjin they were just officials. They were very respectful to the royal family. In front of the Prince Consort of Qiyuan, they naturally did not dare to be arrogant. Greetings to the 3 envoys. Jingwan returned the greeting. Then she took off her cloak and handed it to the servant. The 4 of them sat down. Because of a little selfish reason, I took the liberty to disturb you. I hope it didn't cause you any trouble. Jingwan said as she looked at the 3 of them. Compared to Qiyuan, Tsangjin's clothing was much simpler. The embroidery was also unique. In Jingwan's opinion, it was more like a certain ethnic group in her previous life. There were no complicated accessories on their heads. Instead, they wore a square hat inlaid with gems. Moreover, they did not look very old. Even the person in charge should be less than 40 years old. As for the remaining 2, one of them had a tender face. It was unknown if he was really young or just looked young. As for the other one, based on the greeting just now, he was tall and had a darker complexion. His hands also looked rough and powerful. If he guessed correctly, he should be a military general and the kind with a high status. Princess Consort, you are too serious. Tsangjin's female envoys are the most leisurely when they are on diplomatic missions. The person in charge of Tsangjin said with a smile. There are benefits to being leisurely. Just like now, other countries don't have this blessing. The woman with a tender face next to her said. She was drinking tea with a smile. Obviously she liked this tea very much. It was said that Sifang Villa also had a lot of good tea. The woman who might be a military general also agreed without hesitation. Jingwan also smiled. She could tell that the 3 of them were emotional people. At least they were so when it came to non-official matters. Indeed, on such a day, it's natural to stay in a warm place and drink tea, read books, or play chess. It's the best place. Because the atmosphere at the beginning was more relaxed and cheerful, the conversation became smoother and smoother. The woman with a tender face was probably a loyal fan of Qiyuan culture. She came here because of the books in Sifang Villa. Jingwan called for the female servant beside her and asked her to bring the woman to read the books. The remaining 3 people exchanged the customs and culture of the 2 countries. They were neither too fast nor too slow. There was a sense of joy and contentment in it. The 2 people from Tsangjin also realized that the princess consort of Qiyuan seemed to be different. Logically speaking, the cultural background of the 2 countries was very different. Because of the internal problems of Tsangjin, women had their own way of living. For example, there were many women in Qiyuan who were completely dependent on men. Therefore, there was nothing unacceptable about the women from Qiyuan. On the other hand, some of the ideas of Tsangjin should be very impactful to the women from Qiyuan. They should be curious, yearning, and have some deep-rooted ideas of their own. It should not be easy for them to accept it. However, this princess consort did not seem to be different at all. She accepted it well and talked cheerfully. It made them think that the princess consort in front of them was a woman from Tsangjin's royal family who was as ambitious as them. The 2 of them looked at each other. Obviously, they saw the same thing in each other's eyes. Chapter 430. Although Jingwan wasn't as knowledgeable as Li Hongyuan, she definitely knew a lot of things. Especially with a truly knowledgeable teacher like Li Hongyuan, she wouldn't lose to anyone when it came to discussing relevant topics. Moreover, she was the most qualified person to chat with. One would forget about the difference in status between them and be happy both physically and mentally. After half a day, not only did the hidden gold envoys feel incomparably carefree, they also had the intention of treating Jingwan as a confidant. Even the noble women of Qiyuan who were listening in on the conversation had a new understanding of Jingwan. In fact, their deepest understanding of Jingwan was from what they had heard. Jealous woman, poisonous woman, with a heart as poisonous as snakes and scorpions. In short, there were few positive things about her. However, after a short period of interaction and careful observation as a bystander, they really couldn't see that she was very good at keeping up appearances. If it was said that her level had reached the point of perfection and most people wouldn't be able to see it, then it seemed unlikely. After all, Jin Qin Wang Fei's age was there, she hadn't married into the Wang Fu for long, Jin Qin Wang also didn't have any other women, and the Luo family style was also there. Without external factors, how big was the possibility of her becoming a two-faced and vicious person in such a short period of time? Thinking about it carefully, the possibility of it being a false rumor was the biggest. Wasn't there a different version of the previous incident later on? Stay away from Jin Qin Wang Fei to avoid being affected? Wasn't that what mothers-in-law would say? The former was obviously for her son, to prevent her daughter-in-law from making trouble in her son's backyard. The latter was obviously for her daughter. Only virtuous could have a better foothold in her husband's family. Wang Fei is so happy that she doesn't miss home. A low and pleasant male voice suddenly interrupted. Jingwan turned her head and saw the incomparably handsome living Yama standing next to the many treasures pavilion. Handsome and elegant, he was charming no matter how one looked at him. Jingwan smiled. Why is Wang Ye here? Then, when the others hurriedly stood up to greet her, Jingwan seemed to have realized that she had to stand up. Naturally, she had to greet after the others. This scene was a bit conspicuous. Li Hongyuan didn't feel that something was wrong at all. He took 2 steps forward and personally helped Jingwan up. You stayed in the Four Quarters villa, leisurely and carefree. You completely forgot about this prince and this prince's estate. This prince missed you deeply, but I couldn't find you. This prince had no choice but to find you myself. His words were quite straightforward. Jingwan wanted to pinch him, but she held back. She smiled and pretended not to hear him. There were also rumors that Jin Qin Wang loved his Wang Fei. Looking at the current situation, they were afraid that it wasn't groundless. After all, what kind of person was the king of hell? Everyone was very clear about it. If he didn't want to do something, no one could force him. Moreover, he didn't care about his reputation, so naturally he wouldn't put on an act because of his reputation. Looking at Jin Qin Wang's Wang Fei, the intimacy and joy when she saw Jin Qin Wang was also not the least bit fake. But wasn't it a bit too unreserved? In contrast, the Cang Jin's envoys were in a completely different state. They didn't feel that there was anything wrong with the way husband and wife got along. For them this was the norm. But those husband and wife walking together, one in front and one behind, one in the back, one in the front and one in the back, one in the back, one in the front and one in the back, one in the back. In their eyes it was a very strange thing. Husband and wife, they were the most intimate people in the world. Jin Qin Wang Yi and Wang Fei Nyang Yang's relationship is really good. The Cang Jin's envoy said so, appearing very sincere. Li Hongyuan was the kind of person that if you complimented him and said how good he was, he probably wouldn't even look at you. But if you said that Jingwan was good, or that their relationship as husband and wife was good, it would probably please him. Because of this, he gave the Cang Jin's envoys a look. You can choose a part of the books to take away from Qiyuan. The Cang Jin's envoys were overjoyed. There was nothing more to be happy about than this. Although some of the books that they wanted the most probably couldn't be taken away, it didn't mean that the books that could be taken away were useless. Moreover, with a good start, there may be opportunities in the future. Seeing Li Hongyuan's actions at the birthday banquet, they didn't doubt the authenticity of his words. Many thanks to Jin Qin Wang. The 3 people said in unison. Li Hongyuan nodded indifferently and turned to look at Jingwan. It's late now, let's go back. Outside, Jingwan didn't want to brush away Li Hongyuan's face. Besides, they had been out for a long time today, it was time to go back. Listen to Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan naturally reached out to hold Jingwan's hand. Ben Wang will take his leave first. Respectfully sending off Jin Qin Wang Yi and Wang Fei. Wait until Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan out, put on a cloak, put on a hand warmer and then returned to Jin Qin Wang Fu? Jingwan secretly thought that she was still too naive. According to Li Hongyuan's words, since they came to Sifangbi Mansion, it would be a pity if they didn't go and admire the blooming plum blossoms. Jingwan wanted to say, if you want to admire the plum blossoms, just say it. What's the point of saying, go home? But criticism was criticism. Jingwan quite liked this kind of opportunity to get along. Although there were a lot of plum blossoms in the Wangfu, and Jingwan estimated that the variety and quantity should not lose to Minister Zhong's collection, but no matter how big her own home was, it was still her own home. The feeling of visiting her own home and admiring the scenery outside were two different things. Although the variety of plum blossoms here are ordinary, they are indeed well maintained. In fact, for people like Jingwan, whether they were famous or not was not important. There were a lot of flowers and plants that she would not dislike just because they were not rare and were not well known. Li Hongyuan was non-committal. Although because of his relationship with Jingwan he was also very knowledgeable about these flowers and plants, but in his heart he did not really like these. Jingwan also knew what Li Hongyuan was thinking, but she did not mind. No one stipulated that two people with the same mind must like the same thing. In Jingwan's view, Li Hongyuan was actually better. He was willing to change for the other party, and also willing for the other party to change himself for you. However, that kind of change was only for the two of them to get along, and not for the other party to change themselves beyond recognition. After all, if they did that, it was equivalent to becoming a completely different person. In Jingwan's view, there was no need to love the house and its crow. As long as there was no rejection, it was fine. Clearly he did not like it that much, but he was willing to do it for the other party. What could be more touching than this? Jingwan handed the hand warmer in her hand to the servant girl, and then went down the corridor. She casually grabbed a small ball of snow and threw it at Li Hongyuan with a smile. The snowball brushed past Li Hongyuan's shoulder as it flew past. Li Hongyuan tilted his head and looked at his shoulder, then looked at Jingwan and slightly raised his eyebrows. Then he directly took off his cloak and casually threw it out and walked towards Jingwan. Jingwan hurriedly retreated. Hey, I didn't hit you. Your Highness is a big man, do you still want to take revenge? At such a close distance, there was only one reason why such a big man like Li Hongyuan could not hit her, and that was because she did not want to hit him. Li Hongyuan slowly grabbed a ball of snow and even pinched it a little, making the snowball hard. Looking at his actions, it seemed like he really wanted to take revenge. Jingwan hurriedly hid behind the plum trees and stood behind them. She tilted her head and smiled at Li Hongyuan, with a bit of provocation in her eyes. Li Hongyuan casually threw it out, and with a bang, it exploded on the plum tree in front of Jingwan, splashing a few pieces of ice on Jingwan's body. It was so cold that Jingwan shivered. Hey bastard, are you serious? Jingwan moved 2 steps away and also grabbed a ball of snow. Let's fight. After that, the two of them started to play in the plum trees. Compared to Jingwan, who was dodging left and right, she was a little embarrassed. Although she wanted to avoid Li Hongyuan, she still occasionally fell on Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan was simply taking a leisurely stroll. He even looked slow, but every time he hit the target he could accurately hit the target. Although he did not hit Jingwan once, Jingwan always had the illusion that he was just a hair away from hurting her severely. Naturally, she instinctively dodged, and without a doubt, she was even more embarrassed. Although Jingwan was embarrassed, she was smiling very happily. She had already started to sweat from running and dodging like this. Whether it was the Tibetan gold envoys or the noble ladies of Qiyuan, they all heard about the real situation of the couple who had returned home. They could not help but be curious and came to take a look. From afar, when they heard the happy voices and saw the vague figures, they felt a little complicated in their hearts. I'm not playing anymore. Yuan, you did it on purpose. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.